welcome to my video. This is going to be my completely spoiler-free review of the Marvel show Legion. Now, if you would like to hear my spoiler-written thoughts on individual episodes, the link to the playlist for them will be in the description box. But yeah, no spoilers for this show for any Marvel media, period. So the show is very Lynchian. It toys with the protagonist's David's perception of reality. It does make very clear early in the first episode David isn't actually schizophrenic. He has superpowers that make it appear that he does, like telepathy. The show has a lot of psychedelic imagery. It jumps around time and place frequently. This can be disorienting, but in a way that fascinates, not frustrates, although I acknowledge some people disagree with me on that, which is fine. You're allowed your opinion, even if it's wrong. It's heavily stylized from the very first frame. I'm honestly not used to something this daring from a television show not by David Lynch. It does make a ton of sense for the subject matter. X-Men comics and films alike have always explored the negative side of superpowers, being born with traits that you didn't ask for, and just having to make the best of it, not being able to get rid of it, and become quote-unquote normal. And this one goes as far as exploring that some of the superpowers would be indistinguishable from mental health problems. The show has a number of needle drops to classic pop rock. The characters are real delight. My favorite would have to be Lenny, played by Aubrey Plaza. I'll grant that a lot of the character was definitely there on the page, but she still remains the rare talent who can actually bring that kind of character to life in a way that doesn't feel forced or awkward. All the acting is incredible. The characterization is interesting. Even characters who don't have a lot of screen time or plot impact, there will be something about them that stays in your mind. Now, something very interesting about the character of Lenny. The character was originally meant to be male until Plaza read for the show. She insisted on keeping the dialogue the same as it was originally written, which leads to a very interesting character. I don't know if the character is meant to be bi, pan, trans, non-binary, maybe more than one of those, but since this could increase empathy for LGBTQ+ people, that's another plus, in addition to how compelling Lenny is. The show strikes an impressive balance between sarcasm and sweetness. I'm not sure that I would say it ever quite gets cheesy, but there's definitely moments that could have ended up like that in the hands of lesser writers and directors than the show has, which, you know, there's a non-zero number of episodes of the show directed by one of the Daniels, you know, perhaps currently most famous for Everything Everywhere All at Once, which you have, if you haven't watched yet, you have to. It's amazing. In general, you know, I watched a bunch of their shorts and music videos and stuff that's right here on YouTube. You know, you can find the titles of them on their IMDb page. Yeah, I recommend everything I've watched by them, and I gotta watch more of their movies, because I am aware that it is not the only. There's at least one other movie that they made. Anyway, let's see. Yes, so sarcasm and sweetness. Let's see it's very rare to find something that balances the two of them this well. Usually one overwhelms the other. And in general, like, it's a show that really promotes empathy and understanding in a way that, like, to a radical extent, like, really extreme, really far. Now, early on, every single episode has at least one long take, which are always really effective, not just impressive for how much work obviously goes into stuff like that, but carefully selected. They're not showing off. Sometimes this includes characters walking from one memory to another in a way that obviously can't literally work as exactly how it went originally, but it might be that the memories are related to each other. When it explores memories, sometimes the show is reminiscent of Inception, sometimes Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, at times Psychonauts, never feeling derivative. It also references A Clockwork Orange. I seriously respect a show that is not just willing to, but seemingly gleeful at the mere prospect of making the viewer wonder if we accidentally missed an episode. Like, there are multiple, I suppose I won't say exactly how many, but there are multiple episodes in this show where, yeah, like, legit, I find there was one where I actually spent several minutes, like, having to remind myself, no, I clicked the right thing. This is definitely, I am watching Legion right now, 100%. I did not accidentally put on some other show. You know, I might have even needed to like move my mouse just to double check. Yep, says Legion in the corner. I'm watching the right show. I love that. It's just, we gotta have more stuff like that that isn't so terrified of losing the audience's attention to some other, you know, yeah, like, frankly, I'm sorry, but if you're going, if that's going to put you off, this is not a show for you. And, you know, there's so many other pieces of media that are made for people with, you know, I'm not dissing people with you know, bad attention spans. I have, you know, that same thing, but this is the kind of thing that can help us train to become better at it. Now, let's see. And I acknowledge it is not just, I hate when people say it's just a matter of self-control. It's not only that. Sometimes it is, a lot of the times it's not. Anyway, now on this show, sex comes up a lot. Like, it is not constantly being raised, but it comes and goes. It's in and out. Yeah, there are a number of episodes where every single episode, you know, they bring up sex at least once. And each time let's see. Yeah, right. Sometimes it has something meaningful to say, sometimes it's just a joke or a bit of color, but I can't help but notice how frequent it is. Some of the characters who bring it up, pun still intended, are mental patients who might legitimately just be very sexually frustrated. This show feels like they thought of every trippy power within the X-Men universe that either hadn't been seen in one of the movies, or maybe at least hadn't been overexposed, and put all of them in this one show. Like, several of the powers play with identity, which is a major theme, not just for the powers, and the connection between the body and the mind. You know, there's at least one character who has DID. There's one character who swaps bodies. There is more than one character that share the same body. And, right, this is not always an action show. A lot of the time it's really more of a psychological thriller. Maybe that was already obvious from some of what I've said. I'm just putting it out there because there's a lot of X-Men media that focuses very heavily on the action. So I'm not saying they're the same quality-wise. This is significantly better. But if I were to compare it to one of the X-Men movies, it would be New Mutants. You know, less of an action thing and more this kind of psychological thing that messes with your head. Which, you know, yeah, other than these two, you know, yeah, the movies and shows tend to be... there's really only one other X-Men show that's live action anyway. Yeah, the animated series is also, you know, mainly action, but yeah. And I really appreciate the variety, but it will put it already has put some people off. Some people saw X-Men and thought, oh, superpower fights. I'm not saying there's none of that, but it is less, like, if you want a live action X-Men show with a lot of superpower fights, The Gifted is where it's at. And that's not a criticism. I absolutely love that show. Now, yes, sometimes we won't see the action scene itself, we will see the aftermath, which is obviously easier for the production to handle, does give you a really strong sense of what happened, and can be very ominous. Like, you sit there thinking, how did that even happen? And, you know, sometimes later on you'll be thinking back to it as like, oh, that must have been what happened there. And yeah, actually, I think that might have always been the case. I don't, it's been a while since I watched season 1. I don't remember every single of the aftermaths. I think by the end of the show, pretty much all of them, you can piece together what must have happened. But yeah, there's that thing about nothing shown is as powerful as what we can imagine ourselves. Some episodes have at least one dance scene each. To be clear, I do not mean that the characters are in a club and dance, or some other way in which it would make sense if it was literally happening. I mean that it is very clear that it cannot possibly be going on in real life. In one of the early episodes, patients as well as the people who work in the mental hospital will dance, maybe even lip sync, maybe even look directly into the camera lens. I know some do not love these scenes. I am not one of those people. A lot of the show does happen inside dreams, memories, and other constructs of the mind. There is also stuff that happens in the real world. There is progression, and you understand why the stuff that's happening in people's minds happens. Not necessarily as it happens, but in retrospect. So yeah. Be aware of, I have read some user reviews where people said, too much mind stuff, tapped out. And let's see, I would definitely say that by the time you've reached the end of the Season 1 opener, you will either be in the show's groove or not. By then, I would definitely say I had a pretty firm grasp of what was and wasn't real, felt invested enough to keep going, not merely fascinated by the dreams, which would be fine if it was like a short, maybe, but for a show, there's like, I'm gonna say 27 episodes across 3 seasons. It has to be more than just fascination, and yeah, it is very much a character study. You really get to know not every single character, but a lot of the really major ones. Over the time you spend with them, you really come to understand them. A number of them, when you first meet them, you cannot make heads or tails of. You're like, what is this person's deal? But over time, you come to understand it. And I would say every character has every major character on the show, if given enough, the ones that have enough time, really grow as people, and they don't tend to be by their last scene who they were in their first, but it's done in a way where you buy the character growth. It doesn't feel like character assassination or something. Over the course of the show, you'll see every major film style make at least one appearance, especially in dream sequences and such. Visually, it's incredibly stimulating. It's like if the immensely talented Sam Raimi were fascinated not by the flesh of the body, but the power of the mind. Did that sound like a diss? It wasn't meant to be. I love Sam Raimi. This could easily be the very first X-Men thing that you watch or take in at all. When you started watching this video, the first time you heard me say X-Men, you were like, I don't know what that even is. I'm glad that the trip back from your cave in Mars was successful, but yeah, you could absolutely, you would be able to follow it with no problem that fans of other X-Men media don't also have. The show very much explores the fact that our perception creates our reality and other psychological issues. The show features a lot of music that really messes with your mind. There are a lot of scenes where the audience doesn't know one or more of the following: what, why, when, how, where. And some of the best moments are when we don't know the answer to a single one of them. I already mentioned, there was at least one episode where I genuinely wasn't sure if I was, watching the right show, because it was so utterly removed from everything else that just, yeah. And, right, the action that there is great, especially when it's practical and or at least some elements are off-screen. It does push CG slightly further than what it can make look convincing. It's not really a problem, but it is noticeable. They don't tend to spend forever showing the CG, which, that is one of the worst. If you're doing CG that you can't really make convincing, if you're just showing it like forever, that's especially, yeah. There are a number of scenes where characters are inside other people's subconscious. Maybe it's their memories, their dreams, etc. And they're in there trying to determine the answer to something. Sometimes they're even trapped in there. And we get some glorious, absurd imagery and events. Now, some people hate Amber Midthunder's performance. I believe her performance is entirely on purpose. The character is odd, awkward, and quirky. Most, arguably all, main, major, supporting, etc. characters on the show are. Compare her performance here to the one she gives in Prey. She makes these two characters very distinct. This show is not her, like, not knowing how to act or something. I don't want to make assumptions, but I can't help but notice that it was specifically the young female actor that people pointed to as, oh, you know, this looks like bad acting to me, when literally, like, I'm not saying every performance is the same, but literally, okay, I challenge you, point me to one character in this show that genuinely is not at all, like, awkward and weird and that sort of thing. I believe I can make a case for all of them being that. So, yeah. So, a ranking of every single live-action Marvel show that I've already watched. There's a couple that might seem conspicuous by their absence. I haven't watched, you know, this is the most, yeah. I accidentally screwed up. I was supposed to watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 6 before this. I don't know how I mixed that up, but yeah, other than that, you know, I've watched all of the ones leading up to and including this one, and all of those are on the following list. That's why nothing from that came out after this show is on the list. Yeah. So, yeah, ranking worst to best, keeping in mind I love all of them. They're all amazing. I'm ranking how much I love them, not whether or not I love them all. Every live-action Marvel show that I've watched, and whether we're talking the overall season, the season finale, the season opener, yeah, the list goes as follows. Inhumans, right, that is the only one I don't love. Anyway, that one I hate. The rest I love. Iron Fist Season 1, Daredevil Season 2, The Defenders, Agent Carter Seasons 1 and 2, Cloak and Dagger Seasons 1 and 2, The Punisher Seasons 1 and 2, Iron Fist Season 2, The Gifted Seasons 1 and 2, This Show, Legion Seasons 1 through 3, Daredevil Season 3, Luke Cage Season 2, Luke Cage Season 1, Daredevil Season 1, Jessica Jones Season 3, Jessica Jones Season 2, Jessica Jones Season 1, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Seasons 1 through 5. And yeah, I rate this 8 mental mutants out of 10, and thoroughly recommend it to anyone who finds what I've described up to this point in the video to sound genuinely appealing. And honestly, if it does not sound like your kind of thing, don't feel bad. Like, I know people who love most things Marvel who, like, I've described a little bit of the show to them, and they looked at me like they were, like, mentally making a list of people to invite to the intervention. Like, they were pretty convinced, at least briefly, that I had a drug problem now or something. But yeah, it obviously got more attention from people who otherwise wouldn't have given it a chance because of this. I myself am one of those people. I watched it specifically because I made the decision to watch every live-action Marvel show, at the very least the ones that are on Disney Plus, and yeah, possibly also some of the others. I'm working on it. Yes, so let's see. I think actually the only one that is no longer on Disney Plus is Runaways, and I have it's in the mail. I ordered it. Anyway, yeah, and I do think it is justified. It does not feel like they just slapped the name on. You know, I'm not sure about all of them, but some of the characters here are actually from the X-Men comics, you know. And I really, really appreciate that they made the decision to make it so distinctly different, you know. Yeah, they actually made a more interesting decision, and I would argue the right decision, to make it like this, not try to make it like the other X-Men media, the X-Men live action. I believe at least some of the comics are similar to this. But yeah, that's, show creator Noah Hawley for you. I hope I'm able to watch his Alien show. I hope it goes to Disney Plus here in Denmark. And I might just have to check out, let's see, I want to say Fargo was the other one he made, which I appreciate is not going to be as trippy as this, nor will the Alien one be, but the other aspects that I mentioned, the non-trippy aspects, the character study, the tone managing, the right choices directorially, that kind of stuff, compelling characters, I've heard those are also true of Fargo, and I can imagine it will be of Alien. I feel like that's probably why you hire him at this point, why you let him develop your show. I'm sure there were parts of this show that had, studio network people absolutely tearing their hair out. And that's not the only good reason to love the show.